I'm Nicola Zengiaro. I'm a biosemiotician, actually, and I want to thank you for joining this session on biosemiotics and artificial intelligence. I want to start with a short premise. This talk is not like a technophobic dismissal nor an uncritical cheer for AI. Instead, I will combine empirical detail and conceptual clarity to show how artificial intelligence can be used responsibly in the study of animal communication, but only if it is embedded within a biosemiotic thinking. So over the next 30, 40 minutes, I will describe what major AI projects are doing, explain why the metaphor of translation is misleading, and propose concrete methodological and ethical practices that bridge computation and semiotic interpretation. So I will draw through how on recent projects such as CETI and ESP on the nature LM audio developments and on the core of some core concept in biosemiotic like Umwelt and biotranslation. It can be said that biosemiotics can be an excellent tool for analyzing the ideologies underlying the enthusiasm of companies that claim we will be able to communicate with animals through AI. So, in fact, as you can see here in this slide, media and some scientific commentaries have framed a simple narrative. Modern machine learning can translate your cat. Okay. Headlines have claimed that with enough data and big models, we can talk to whales or decipher bird language. But we have to ask ourselves, why is this story so appealing? So first, machine learning has spectacularly changed what is possible in human language processing. Embeddings, large language models, and self-supervised learning genuinely reveal latent structure in corpora. And second, projects such as CETI, that is a Cetacean Translation Initiative, and ASP, the Earth Species Project, have concrete pipelines. Huge dataset, unsupervised structure discovery, and attempts to correlate signal with behavior. So the rhetorical move is straightforward. If models can align geometrical shapes of meaning across human languages, why not align human and non-human semantic shapes? But here is the immediate caution we have to take. This promising analogy quietly imports an entire ontology of what language is. It treats animal signals as if they were tokens in a decode book that only needs deciphering. So my claim in this presentation is that this import is epistemically consequential. So we must ask not only whether AI finds patterns, for example, but whether those patterns correspond to the living, embodied meanings animals enact. So that is the main tension I will trace. But before asking whether AI can translate animals, we should first ask a more fundamental question. What do we mean by translation? So let's be concrete about the computational paradigm nowadays. AI treats communication as a signal processing problem in basically four steps. The first step is record signals, acoustic traces, spectrograms, movement tags, and so on. The second step is segment and cluster. So acoustic are sliced into units and grouped. The third step is embed, represent each unit as a vector in high-dimensional latent space. And the last step, the fourth, is the interpretation. Proximity and geometric relations in that latent space are interpreted as a semantic similarity or functional equivalence, but we will see in a deeper phase. Two projects, as we said before, are central to the debate. So these are my key studies today. The CETI on your left side and ESP on your right side that focus intensively on, well, the CETI focused on sperm whales and their codas. For example, the CETI pipelines collect codas, pairs them with the movement and behavioral metadata using, for example, tags and drones, and seeks to discover structural regularities. And ESP takes a broader approach, for example, large multi-species dataset and foundational audio language models like Nature LM Audio aim to learn, for example, transferable acoustic representations. But a key sentence I borrow here in the slide from Azaraskin, that is the founder of ESP, is that machine learning, he said, can turn semantic relationship into geometric relationships, and that a language can be represented as a shape defined by the relationship between its concept. So this is particular, that is not because this is not an explanatory claims about biology, neither ethology. It's a statement about representational power. It is empirically useful because embeddings do reveal a correlational structure, but we must keep clear the distinction because geometry in latent space is a mathematical representation, not direct access to the animal's communication. So at the heart of this revolution are large scales project. These are the biggest one. And the objectives of these two companies are bold. If you can find it in their webpage, they said they are trying to overcome interspecific barriers to understand the what and the how of the communication of species such as sperm whales, treating their acoustic exchanges not merely as a set of behaviors to be correlated with stimuli, but as veritable linguistic system to be decoded. So the fundamental premise here, common of both projects, is based on an intuition as powerful as it is problematic. The possibility that machine learning can transform semantic relationship into geometric ones. According to this view, a language can be represented as a shape defined by the connection between its concept in a multidimensional space, making it theoretically possible to map and translate any communication system by identifying recurring patterns, even in the absence of prior knowledge of its structure. As you can see here, the word like dog have the same semantic relation from the geometrical representation by AI modality between Spanish, English, and Japanese, no? And this is very near to the universal grammar theory of Chomsky, for example. But the methodology shared by these initiatives is articulated through a systematic and data-intensive process. The first step consists of the large-scale collection of bioacoustic and behavioral data obtained via a network of underwater sensors, for example, drones and tags attached to the animals in order to create an unprecedented multimodal dataset. Subsequently, this raw data is processed to segment and classify discrete acoustic signals, isolating the basic phonatory units. And the third and crucial phase is that of correlation. I mean that the classified signals are related to observed behaviors, social context, and ecological dynamics in attempt to associate each acoustic unit with a potential contextual meaning. So at the final process, in the final step, these immense archives of correlated data are used to train deep neural networks, particularly in the large language models, uh, tasked with autonomously identifying the regularities, latent structure, and syntactic rules that govern the communication of the species under study. So this approach, while very technologically advanced, rests on a series of epistemological assumptions that warrant critical analysis. First, it posits that animal communication is structured in a manner fundamentally analogous to human language, that is based on a combinational system of discrete signals, for example, a syntax that regulates their concatenation and a stable link to an external referent. And secondly, it assumes that meaning is an intrinsic property of the signal, encoded information that can be discovered and somehow rendered intelligible through algorithmic decoding in a process akin to translating an unknown foreign language. So, consequently, it fostered the belief that a universal translation linked to the idea of a human universal grammar by Chomskyan theory is possible solely through the large-scale recognition of patterns, delegating to the machine, delegating to the machine the task of unveiling a hidden grammar of nature. So the appeal of this perspective lies in its apparent objectivity and its capacity to process a quantity of data inaccessible to the human observer. Yet it risks projecting anthropocentric categories onto radically different semiotic systems, overlooking the embodied, lived, and co-created nature of meaning in the animal world. So here you can see a brief summary about the shared methodology and common assumption between CETI and ESP, for example. And there are common methodology and common assumption, for example, between these two companies. But for example, if we can concentrate in one of them, the SETI project employs large language models to translate sperm whales clicks, operating on the foundational assumption that animal communication functions as a formal code awaiting to decode, no? Much like a foreign human language. By treating acoustic signals as a data points to be decoded, this approach implies that meaning is an objective property hidden within the signal itself, which can be extracted through algorithmic processing. However, from a biosemiotic perspective, this represents a significant semiotic flattening obviously the complexity of animal communication. So sperm whale clicks are not isolated tokens. They are deeply embedded in a social, affective, and ecological fabric, and they are shaped by kinship, physical environments, and embodied states that a purely computational model cannot access. When we project human linguistic categories onto these signals, we risk losing the unique alterity of the whale's life world. Meaning in nature is not merely decoded from a static source. It is lived, felt, and co-created through the active participation of organisms within their specific Umwelt. Therefore, while AI can identify patterns, genuine understanding requires us to bridge the gap between algorithmic classification and the living experience of the organism. For example, now if you take this paper, which despite being a few years old since it was published in 2022, still provide a very good overview on the situation of the situation. So we can analyze it semiotically. As you know, cultural semiotics tends to focus on textuality. So to save you the trouble of analyzing it, I've done it for you. So if you see here, there are two different semiotic analyses. The first one is the cultural semiotic analysis, and the second one is the ecosemiotic and biosemiotic analysis. So the first one, although the images inside of the paper indicate like a multimodal construction of the coding, a textual analysis show other things. For example, we can read in the paper that recent advances potentially allow something, which can provide the crucial first step. So is something hypothetically. And the authors wrote without known meaningful units and without any easy way to elicit meaning. So they are trying to say that they don't have to look into the meaning making process. And they wrote in another part of the paper that recent studies have also shown that unsupervised structure discovery can provide benefits. Not they provide for sure benefits, but they can provide. And for in the conclusion of this paper, the authors say that the relevant units must be inferred bottom up with no ground truth available. So there are a lot of many uncertainty inside of this proposal of inside of this project. And the paper on your left, from a biosemiotic perspective, we can look at this paper published in 2010 by a group of mathematicians who analyzed how whales' communication channel change as water temperature change. This is quite obviously because climate change is altering the condition under which animals communicate. But the paper provide like a very interesting point because they are trying to say that salinity, for example, temperature and acidification change the speed of the sound, and the attenuation of frequencies and the propagation of channel communication. So as we can do this like a biosemiotic analysis of this text, the author says that over decades tonal frequencies have shifted in blue whale songs as a function of environmental change. If acoustic channel change, the same signal shape can mean different things or become less effective. In extreme case, soundscape degrade and semiotic system fragment. Thus, any model that ignores the acoustic channel's ecology risk misattributing categories. A detected change in communicative structure may be ecological adaptation rather than a syntactic difference. Conversely, for example, AI can be an excellent tool to map semiotic collapse, to quantify loss of complexity in soundscape that signals ecological stress. This is a crucial constructive role for AI aligned with conservation, for example. And despite media, as you can see here in the slide, claims a lot that we are already translating whales, that rhetoric hides an ideological assumption. AI outputs are often symbolic approximation, not direct window into animal meaning. Without embedding results in the organism's embodied, intentional, and affective context, models risk transforming rather than translating semiosis. It is therefore more accurate to treat AI as a powerful microscope, for example, one that reveals complex patterns, whose finding must be interpreted within a biosemiotic framework and validated experimentally and ethically. So, as Roman Jakobson said in his works, we have different typology of translation. Okay, for example, Jakobson traced three different types, typology of translation: interlingual, interlingual, sorry, and intersemiotics. So, and if we take this modeling of translation, we can say that CETI style work often inverts the logic. It takes non-verbal signals and retroprojects human linguistic categories onto them, effectively turning non-verbal into verbal. Non-verbal communication, animal communication, to verbal communication. That is not intersemiotic translation in Jakobson's sense. Rather, it is a projection of our categories onto other life forms. Remember that even in human-to-human translation, the human-to-human translation is never isomorphic. Cross-species context add embodiments and different perceptual scaffolds to take into account. So we must therefore resist to do these kind of analogies or metaphorical example of isomorphism. And we can ask to our analysis, what kind of correspondences are epistemically justifiable? Biotranslation, for example, the transfer between different Umwelten, is not achieved by categorization alone. It requires interpretative compatibility, experimental validation, and an appreciation of pragmatic differences, but we will see in a moment. So I want to share with you some problems that I detected in my analysis of this big project. For example, the Umwelt, you think of the Umwelt as the subjective word of a living being. It is the meaningful reality that an organism constructs through its perceptual marks, the specific signals its senses selected, no? And its operational mark, the action it can perform in response. So this Umwelt inside of this image is how the organism is connected to the environment through meaning making process. For example, for a sperm whale, the world is not composed of object in the human sense, but of acoustic reflection, thermal layers, and social bounds, translating into vibration, for example. So the critical problem with artificial intelligence is that it attempts to interpret science while remaining entirely outside this subjective horizon. An animal a signal only carries meaning within its own Umwelt. It loses its intelligibility the moment it is extracted from the bodily and ecological context data, in which it was enacted. So AI, no matter how powerful, does not possess an Umwelt. It can correlate data and find statistical regularities, but it cannot interpret experiences grounded in a live world. Okay. The second problem that I found in my analysis is the gap of semantic field. For example, if we classified a label like a segment type A because it precedes a behavior demonstrates productive power, obviously, of the AI, but translation implies a mutual intersubjective mapping, an interpretative exchange where both sender and receiver anchor signs to similar interpretants. For example, in human translation, we verify by communicative success. The receiver understands and acts as intended. For animals, we must devise analogous criteria. While AI can successfully recognize, identify, and classify vocal patterns, a profound gap remains. Neither we nor the machine understand the actual meaning behind that information. Even if the algorithm correctly links a specific vocalization to a behavior, we are still operating in a semantic vacuum. We might achieve a functional reaction, but we don't truly know what we have said to them, and the machine has no comprehension of what it is doing or delivering. So the semantic problem remains obscure. The third problem is really obvious because AI's capabilities create an array of practical risks very quickly, very quickly, we can say that talking to chickens is meaningless if we exploit, torture, and kill them, obviously. So this research is very powerful because the potential of uses of AI could harm animals, such as using it to increase the efficiency of animal exploitation. And obviously, there are a lot of many ways to use it to benefit them, not only by preventing harm, but also by promoting the interest of all sentient beings. So the ethical problem is very, very powerful in these companies. So Thomas Seebeck, that is one of the father of modern biosemiotics, he said that bilateral semiosis refers to the reciprocal interpretative exchange between two subjects, where a sign is produced, perceived, and re-elaborated by both parties. But today we have moved into a world of trilateral semiosis, an interaction between human, animal, and machine. AI is not a neutral observer. It is a discursive actant that actively shapes the semiotic field. Every algorithmic choice, from sampling method and objective function to pre-processing pipelines, is in fact a semiotic choice. These choices determine which signals are amplified and which are silenced, effectively reorganizing the entirely interpretative ecology. So recognizing AI as an actant means that we must design experiments that treat the model as a participating member of the semiotic system. We cannot simply look at the data, we must analyze how the machine's own affordances reshape our research question and the very ecosystem we are trying to understand. So, recognizing AI as an actant means designing experiments that treat the model as a part of semiotic system, not just an interface. So obviously recognizing AI as an actant allows us to focus its power on what it does best. For example, acting as a semiotic amplifier by giving the machine the task it is actually built for, we open up several positive avenues. For example, AI can analyze a vast biological dataset to detect hidden patterns, such as microrhythms or spectral shifts that far exceeded human perceptual limits. But they are not yet meanings, but they are invaluable structural leads. Second, for example, these create new interdisciplinary methods. We combine the machine's computational strength with biosemiotic theories of Umwelt, ensuring that data analysis never loses sight of the living organism. And third, AI becomes like a vital tool for ecological research by monitoring soundscape and communication system at scale. It can detect semiotic collapse or shifts in ecosystem health, serving as an early warning system for conservation, for example. And ultimately, the dialogue between AI and biosemiotics promotes a less anthropocentric and more ethically aware approach. So we can, for example, stop trying to force animals into human linguistic boxes and start using the machine to respect their unique life worlds. In this framework, AI is not a translator of a code, but can help us to listen more deeply to the complexity of non-human life. So here there are some core biosemiotic concepts that can help to move forward this reduction of complexity of animal communication. The Umwelt that we already known, the semiotic freedom that is a concept by Jesper Hofmeier, where communication is not a fixed mechanical code, it is a living process characterized by a semiotic freedom. And the third core concept is biotranslation by Kalevi Kuhl and Peter Torop, where this biotranslation require interpretative compatibility, not syntactic correspondences. And this concept can be useful for AI new methodology for animal communication. And we are concluding with this metaphor of translation that, however seductive, is epistemically misleading. AI does not act as a transparent channel or neutral decoder. It is an apparatus of semiotic rewriting that segments, classifies, and models data according to its own internal logic. What the machine produces is therefore an artifact, but its correspondence with the whale's perceptual meaningful world remain problematic and must be demonstrated, not assumed. So a biosemiotic framework is not peripheral commentary, but a condition of possibility for any non-reductionist responsible science of animal communication. And in conclusion, as Kalevi-Kuhl rightly states in Trento in last year in June, within this conference about ideologies, he said that AI will take care of everything predictable. It is up to us humans to deal with the unpredictable. This insight perfectly framed the conclusion of our discussion, because the alliance between AI and biosemiotics is not about replacing human interpretation with machines. It is about an integration that allows us to combine the predictive power of algorithm with the deep interpretative analysis of semiotic and ecological features. Only through this integration is it possible to mend the broken continuity between organisms, environments, and cultures. By using AI as a tool to reveal patterns and biosemiotics as the lens to understand their lived value, we can finally restore coherence to the processes of ecological signification and meaning-making process. This is our responsibility to ensure that as we expand our hearing through technology, we do not lose our ability to truly listen to the living word. Thank you very much for your attention. Here you can find some article that I wrote last year about this issue. And obviously I leave you here my webpage where you can find my project and write me an email if you are interested in this kind of topic. Thank you very much.